Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Punch Kick Choke Chat. It is Thursday at 6:30 p.m. my time because I'm in Calgary tonight. And I just want to thank my senseis for waiting a little bit for me. I know there were some other glitches, but I just got off a flight. I just took a limo right from the airport to my hotel, and I'm so happy to be here tonight. And none of this is about me, but I just want to say how exciting it is for me as we go to like a year and a half of doing this show, all the different locations I've been able to do the show, because just like true martial artists, we just go, well, what's the deal? Where am I? Great, let's do the thing. So I just want to say thanks to my senseis for waiting, and I'm sorry we're a little late tonight. Every week, I get the pleasure of introducing Sensei Nicholas Suino, and I'm going to keep it brief this week because of my tardiness, and simply just say that he is an 8th Dan in Iaido, a 6th Dan in Jiu-Jitsu, a 6th Dan in Judo, and I always just say those things relatively quickly, and then say something nice about him or some other aspect about his life, but an 8th Dan in any martial art, a 6th Dan in any martial art, let alone two. I mean, if you do the math on that, that's 20 Dans he holds. And I don't say that facetiously. This is somebody who's dedicated his life to martial arts. Sensei Suino, how you doing tonight?
Well, I'm always a lot better after you introduce me, Sean. Thank you so much. It just proves that if you stick with it long enough, as Kent Nelson said a number of interviews ago, right? We were the ones that stuck with it. And as in the last decade, I've gone from a fighter to a teacher more and more. I just feel like it's longevity, staying in it, helping other people get better. Thanks again for that intro, and it's really cool that you're out. And I've been introduced by you in many different cities around the world, and it's pretty awesome now. It falls to me each week to introduce Randy Dolphan, a sensei in his own right. He owns a school in Kitchener, Ontario, and is a 7th Dan in karate, Yondan in Iaido, certified badass, multi-time champion fighter and kata performer, student of Hanshigiri Legacy, who's on the call, a long time friend of mine, whom I believe I met in Boston right about the time the dinosaurs died because the meteor hit the planet. And we've been training together in Canada and in Michigan ever since. Randy, how are you tonight?
I'm really good. So I'd say this is the second time today we've talked to each other.
Indeed.
First conversation was great, and I know this one's going to be good too. And again, you always say about how Sean Benson introduces you, and I don't know, in my opinion, you do it better. That's just my opinion.
No, you have to say that.
Before we move on, like last week I said about our trip, and I talked a little bit about you, Sensei Suino, and I want to just say a couple words about Sean Benson tonight, who he's my most senior student, one of my most best friends. He was saying today when we were chatting about my consigliere, right? So Sean's one of those guys that when you tell him stuff, I don't care who you are, he's going to keep it to himself. He's not going to share it with other people if you say, don't share this. I really respect that about him and love it about him. And I was thinking about him flying to Calgary. And if you're watching this show, he always whitewashes it when he talks about his problems that he had in his past. But I just want to say that Sean Benson is a guy that once came to me in a park and said, I think I want to be an actor. And I just remember thinking, you should do that, man. You're going to be a good actor. Like I never, like, I wasn't negative about it. I was like, be an actor. And I watched him after he said he was going to be an actor. He became the lead on a bunch of things. And this culminated in him moving to Los Angeles and playing a major role on General Hospital. I also want to share with you that he had some really bad demons and he lost everything. He lost every single thing. He lost that role. He literally came back from Los Angeles with like almost nothing. And, you know, when I talk about what he had in LA, he had multiple motorcycles, he had Porsches, he was going on race days, he was hanging out with like playing softball with Mickey Rourke, like just living the life, came back with nothing. And I'm super proud of him and super happy to have seen him rebuild his career, come back to Toronto, start like just at square one, nose to the grindstone, get it all done. Today he's in Calgary, filming a great thing that's going to lead to more great things. He's got a Porsche again. He's got a motorcycle again. He's hanging out with cool people again, like us. And I'm just fucking super proud of the guy. And I love the guy. And I just want to say that because he always says nice stuff about all of us. And he should get his turn to have some nice things said about him. So want to share that. Now, for me, I always get to introduce our guest, and I always get to introduce Hanchi Legacy, my teacher in karate and in life. And Sensei Legacy is the 10th Dan, and I was there when he got that rank. I was in the room, so I know for sure he's the 10th Dan. I actually talked to his sensei, Anthony Sandoval. I knew he was getting a 10th Dan actually before he knew he was getting a 10th Dan. So I can tell you, legitimate 10th Dan, and I was there when he got his 10th Dan from his teacher. He is a member of the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame. He's an author of this book, which I'm going to read a small excerpt from in a minute. Can't go without saying that he also was a student of Harold Warden, Benny Allen, super important figure in his life and actually in my life, even though I never met him. Student of Richard Kim, and has a ranking, a black belt ranking in Iaido from Sensei Suino, and is a student of Sensei Suino. And I just want to say one of the things when I was thinking about tonight and our conversation with Sensei Glaze that was coming, I started to think about Sensei Legacy, and I started to think about in my life the many martial artists who have been female that I've been introduced to through Sensei Legacy. And one of the things I want to say about Sensei Legacy is in all that time, Sensei Legacy does not treat, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're black, white, man, woman, young, whatever it is, when you come in Sensei Legacy's class, you're going to be learning some karate. And you're going to be learning karate at a high level because he doesn't see you as a woman, a man, black, white. He sees you as a potential martial artist who could be the greatest martial artist of all time. And that's one of the things that I want to say about Sensei Legacy is that in a world right now where lots of people are talking about, you know, tribes and whatever, different things, he's never been a person, I've always been able to look up to him as a person who just, you come in the floor, doesn't matter, man, woman, young, old, black, white, Asian, whatever it is, put your toes on the line and start doing martial arts. And that's what I want to say about Sensei Legacy tonight. And now what I want to do is I really, really am excited to introduce Sensei Glaze, who started her training in 1967. And I'm not going to say how old she was when she started, but she can tell everybody that if she wants. But 1967, which was 4 years before I was born. And like all of the great martial artists we've had on here, she started training in the Central YMCA in Ohio. Like so many, I mean, the YMCA should be literally our sponsor because everybody says they started at the YMCA. She has a graduate degree in geology. I'm a big fan of, I work at a university, so I'm a big fan of higher education. Sensei Glaze is a Shichidan. She's a 7th degree black belt in judo. She's an IJF-Judge, USA Judo A judge, USJF A teacher in all of the 7 katas, and a former International Kata competitor. She holds multiple gold medal national and world competition medals for shiai and kata. Sensei Glaze was a student of Tony Owen, a judo teacher and coach, inducted into the Hall of Fame, actually just in 2020. And she is currently a part of the Black Swamp Judo Club in Toledo, Ohio. For me, I always like to give a couple of personal thoughts, and I don't know how some of these will be received tonight. So Sensei Glaze, if you want to scold me as soon as I'm done, I will receive those criticisms quietly and just let you criticize me. But one thing I want to say is the person we had on last week, Al Panekia, had nothing but great things to say about Sensei Glaze. And I've never met either of them personally, but I can tell you that my partner said about Sensei Panekia, I really want to meet this guy. He's a nice person, and I agree with her. And if he has nice things to say about Sensei Glaze, I think she must be an awesome person. Sensei Suino says nothing but nice things about Sensei Glaze, her person, the person that she is, and her skill in martial arts. One thing I want to say is that while I don't know Sensei Glaze, when I was recently in British Columbia with Sensei Legacy, and we got to meet Sensei Robert Mustard. And one of the things he said was, one of the things I like about the Legacy group is that you guys carry a certain attitude when you walk in, and attitude is about 50% of the martial arts. And if you're looking at Sensei Glaze right now, I don't know what you think, but I see a person who has a good attitude for martial arts, a serious attitude, a serious demeanor. I like that. As I was saying about Sensei Legacy, you know, nobody on this call thinks that there's a sex or a race in martial arts. But the fact is, Sensei Glaze is a female. She's a woman. And I make some assumptions here. That when she started in 1967, that for every 100 people that were in martial arts, maybe 1 or 2 were female. And I could be wrong about that, but I think I'm probably right. And I think that, you know, of the other 97 or 98 of the people who were in martial arts that were probably male, there was probably a good portion of them that thought that Sensei Glaze shouldn't be in the room with them. Mm-hmm. That's my assumption. I could be wrong. I'm sure there were lots of them that welcomed her being there, but I'm sure there was a good portion of people who didn't think that she should be there. And, you know, we live in an age today, while this isn't true, and I'm really happy. But one thing I know about Sensei Glaze is that she's had to overcome certain obstacles that none of us on this call that are hosting, none of us have had to overcome those obstacles. And thanks to her, most of the people today are not going to have to overcome those same obstacles, because she's a pioneer in martial arts. And it's thanks to her that some of those things have stopped, because she has stayed and she has worked really hard. And I'm super proud and excited to be talking to her tonight. I really want to hear this conversation. Sensei Glaze, how's it going?
Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm honored to be a guest on your show. I'm kind of overwhelmed at the things that you just said. They've hit home a lot, as far as the only person on the mat who's a female, but I was very lucky when I came to Toledo that when I needed something to do, that my first kata partner, Bonita Hudak Ashby, who was a student of Tony Illard, had a intramural class at the university. And I needed some form of exercise, and I've always been very lucky to have strong women working out with me. And you probably know that I'm a student of Fukuda Sensei. And, you know, I just have been very lucky to have strong women ahead of me also.
Awesome.
So,
thanks for that, Sensei Glaze.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Sean Benson just do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we're going to get into the details of all of that stuff that you were just talking about, because we all want to hear all of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're very
Let me just jump right in real quick. So everybody watching, the first and most important thing is at the bottom of your screen, you have a chat button, and that is something we want you to use. Hit that button with your questions, and it'll go through to Robert, who's running our show behind the scenes, and he'll feather them through to us for our guests. And we love that you get to be a part of the living history that we're so humbled to be able to help create in some small measure. And then the other thing is, this is 5 adults having a conversation. You might hear some language, you might hear some perspective, you might hear some framing of thoughts that you don't like. And I always like the idea, if you spot it, you got it. So if you see a problem, you have a problem. All I'm saying is, if you have a problem with us, rewatch the show on YouTube later, or re-listen to it on the podcast and see if after 3 listens. I'm being facetious, but what I am saying is that you can watch this later on YouTube. We're not live tonight, but we will be shortly replaying this. And also we're on every podcast streaming service. So go check us out there. And like I said, if you have an issue with the show, you have an issue with you. Sensei Glaze, we already got to a little place where I always like to start with all our guests. First off, it's such a pleasure. And I really echo what Sensei Dolphan said, you know, your humility chatting before we even started about being honored to be a guest. It's our honor. When you were young, what brought you into the dojo or the club, and what kept you there?
Well, I've always been athletic, and actually I grew up playing golf. I was on the women's golf team at Ohio State when I was an undergraduate. And when I moved to Toledo, I had taken that 6-week course at the Central YMCA, and I saw that there was an intramural judo course. And, I needed something to do and some exercise while in graduate school. So I went there. And that was the fall of 1970. And in 1971, Bunny invited me to her club, which was Tony Owen's club, because Ryozo Nakamura was coming to visit. And he was sponsored by the Kodokan to travel throughout the United States to, enhance judo. So I went there and worked out 3 nights in a row, took a good beating, but, I'm an old athlete, or athlete, that I just kept getting up. And that's what brought me into judo permanently. And at the end of the 3 days, Nakamura sensei said to Tony Owen that Bunny had already competed at the national championships, and Nakamura said I should be Bunny's partner to train. He said, you train all this year, next year you compete, you won't win, but after that you'll win. So I trained, and 1972 was my first national competition. We didn't win, but we did win 2 medals. And I had the honor to meet Fukuda sensei then, who my teacher, Tony Owen, was, Fukuda sensei loved Tony Owen. So, she of course paid attention to Bunny and I. And at that time, I also competed against Elizabeth Lee, who was a student of Fukuda sensei's, and I formed a very strong relationship with Elizabeth later in her life and later in my life. So, that's what brought me into the dojo to stay, because I always loved to compete in any sport, and judo gave me that opportunity to compete and get in shape, get rid of all the anxiety that I had and frustration from sitting in class and studying and everything. So judo was a gift to me.
So how did you stay with the golf, or did you let that fade?
No, I still played. I haven't played golf in the last several years because it takes too much time, but at different times in my life, I played competitive golf again.
Right on. But I mean, I just think it's such an incredible achievement to be on a varsity golf team. I mean, that's such a high level.
It was the 60s, remember? And it was before Title IX. We had some good players. My teammates are still friends of mine. And one of my teammates for my freshman year was Renee Powell, who is a very well-known and highly honored golfer. She's in the PGA Hall of Fame. Wow. And the LPGA. But her father, they have a historical golf course that her father built near Akron, Ohio, called Clearview Legacy. And she has been given many awards throughout her life. So I'm honored to have been around such outstanding golfers all my life also.
That's really incredible. And I actually want to throw it to Sensei Suino in a sec to unpack some of those early judo names. But before I do that, I noticed Sensei Dolphan as well, perking up at the same point I did. You talked about anxiety and frustration while studying in general. And I know for me, karate, I was such an intense kid and I had trouble relaxing. And, I found this through my martial arts. And can you talk a bit about that for yourself? Because I think we haven't touched on that a ton in our episodes. And I think it's really important.
Well, just working out and putting yourself, for me, of wrestling with somebody or that competition of just beating on somebody and not meaning to hurt them, but just getting rid of all that energy and stuff. It's fun. So that's what that has always been my my release in all of my life, of just being able to exercise, in judo in particular. Now that I'm older, I have to do other things to release that energy, but judo's still there.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to jump too far ahead, but is it because as you get older, the judo, you can't train it as intensely on your body? Is that why you have to find the other things?
I'm still pretty good for my age, but I was everybody's uke for a long time. From that I took a lot of falls, and I miss taking so many falls now. But I'm 73, so I just can't do the same things that I did. My mind, I can do everything in my mind, but my body still can do some things, but I'm not 50 anymore. That's my new saying. I could do a lot of stuff when I was 50.
I can't believe you're 73, number one.
Yeah.
I'll be 50. I'll be 50 this year, so
You're still good.
Yeah. I'm still good. Yeah. I can't believe you're 73. But I also can't believe Sensei Legacy 75. And I can't believe Sensei Suino's 61.
Yeah.
I can believe Sensei Benson is 60. Like, that's what
there. We're getting there. We're getting there. Maybe I'll get some of that Botox soon. Sensei Suino, I want to throw it to you because I know, especially last week, you had a lot more questions about specific people and eras. And I was so excited about the judo aspect because it's a newer thing to me. But I wouldn't mind throwing it to you to crack open some of the people and some of the pathways that Sensei Glaze might have followed that you'd be more familiar with.
I guess there's two tracks I'd like to touch base on. First, just a little bit about the competitive circuit in those early days. So Sensei Glaze, I started judo in 1968 at the Ann Arbor Y, and we used to go to a lot of competitions. AAU was big in those days. I'm just wondering, did you, what was your era of, let's say your youngest era, first decade of competition? What did that look like for you?
Well, I actually competed mostly in kata because my sensei didn't think women should fight. So my goal, because I'd been competitive in another sport, my goal was to compete five years at nationals and do well. Well, comes the fifth year, my partner quit, and it was 1976, and I wanted to still compete to fulfill that 5 years. So I did shiai, and the nationals was my second shiai ever.
Wow.
But I only lost one match, and that was to the winner, which placed me third. When I came back from that tournament, my sensei wouldn't talk to me because, he was always a close friend, but he wouldn't talk to me. So I went back to competing in golf. I just competed in shiai until that point. And then when I really, in the 80s, I was busy with having kids and opening 2 stores. And, I always was there. Judo was there for me, but I didn't compete. I was competing in golf and, working and having kids. And then in the 90s, I started competing again, and I did in shiai, and I did well. But then I competed with Mark Pasquinelli in 1999 at the first World Masters in Kata. And I got our sensei to start thinking about teaching students kata again. And he always had it in his mind. In 1996, we all learned all the 7 kata. but he didn't want any of us to compete until we asked his permission to compete in 1999. So in that early circuit, I really wasn't around a lot other than to compete in kata. And as I said, I always stayed in shape, and judo was always there for me. So, but from the 90s on, I've been very active in all forms of judo. Not shiai because I was in my 40s at that point.
And we chatted about this a little bit with Al last week, but I just want, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on what it means to be proficient in 7 kata and judo. I'm not sure our non-judo listeners have any idea of what a monumental amount of work that is.
It certainly is. And, you know, it takes being in shape and constantly thinking of each part of the kata, and they all tie together, but still, I'm still learning and still discovering things and putting things together. It's a wonderful thing to be able to have someone like Al that who also studies intently, to be there to talk to. I recently did a Koshiki no Kata clinic in the DC area for people who are going up to 7th Dan. You need that kata for 7th Dan. And Kuniko Takeuchi sensei, I taught with her, but Al was my coach. You know, I called him coach, but I started thinking, who do I need to study with? What, I got to do this. You know, I got to study. I just can't do everything in my head. And Al was there to help me study. And he's my last competitive partner in kata. We last competed in 2009 in Malta at the it was the first world IJF World Kata Championship. And then Al had, had his accident, and, he hasn't been able to perform like he used to. So, I've been given many opportunities by many people to travel and do kata. And I've had many wonderful teachers from the Kodokan, from, my teachers, Tony Owed, who is the basis of everything that I know. He was a wonderful communicator.
And Sensei Dolphin, I know you want to break open just the general theme of kata and bring Sensei Legacy into some chat about that.
Yeah, I guess Sensei Glaze, we can go around the horn on this. Even Ben's, I'd love to hear what your thinking is. As an expert in these 7 kata, like, how do you feel that translate? How does the kata translate to the actual getting hands-on and doing something with another person in a more chaotic environment? So I'd love to hear like how you feel that translates and what the value of the kata is when you get into randori or something like that. So we'll start with, I don't know, who should we start with, Ben's, on that?
Why don't we start with Sensei Glaze, and then we'll go Hanshi on down. That way we can break it open a bit.
In judo, if you perform the kata, like, everything is real and not a dance, which that's how it should be. Like in Goshin Jitsu, when you try to hit someone with a stick or stab them with a knife, or, we can't shoot with a gun, but hold it, and all the joint locks, they're real. And if someone, as Tori, if someone would come to hit me, they have to hit me, or I'm not, that's how I practice with Al, with my other partner, Ryan O'Connor. You have to hit me. Otherwise, I can't react properly. So everything is real, especially like in Nagi no Kata, the forms of throwing. It's a study of how the techniques work, of how Kazushi, Tsukure, Kake work. And if you know how a technique works, you can use it better in randori. If you in memorizing the moves in Nagino Kata, there may be some time that you're moving in randori that, oh, I feel that move, and throw the person. So it's kata is the real techniques just done safely for the most part. Now, I've seen people hit with sticks and given bloody noses when they're punched, but you know, that's lack of control, or the other person's not paying attention. So that's how I feel. It's everything is for real, and it's not acting. The throws are real, the joint locks are real, the pins are real, the chokes are real, and the escapes are real. Everything has to be effective and real.
Thanks, Sensei. That's awesome. Hanshi Legacy, where do you go with how kata translates?
Kata is so important. It not only what Sensei Glaze said on a physical level, you get to see how things work. You learn how to fire your body properly, your stance, everything like that. But a very important thing is that you engage your mind. And like I mentioned, I believe maybe even last week, that when you're fighting with your friend, or you're competing with your friend or someone, you're really trying not to hurt them. But when it becomes a time in your life where a dangerous moment happens, you have to be used to that. It's like anything else, you know. You start doing something for the first time, you don't know how to do it, so you're a bit clumsy. But doing it over and over, and in kata, and I hate to say this, but it is one of the times that you can actually destroy or kill your opponent. And if something like that happens, and say somebody breaks in your house and they're attacking your daughter or something to that effect, how is your mind going to be calm? How is it going to be used to something like that? You do that by doing kata. Kata will allow you to kill your opponent in your mind. So that way that your mind is prepared for something dangerous and not nice for any human being. So it's for those who omit kata and say they just stick to just doing the physical fighting and punching a bag and stuff like that, they will never be an entire martial artist. They're just going to lack from all three. And Funakoshi's words, the body, mind, and spirit are inseparable. Therefore, you have to train on all levels.
Thanks, Hanshi. Sensei Suino?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what's been said on that so far. I just add two aspects from my experience. One is that when I was living in Japan and training 3, 4, 5 hours of Nagano Kata every Saturday with my training partner, John Gage, I was also the best competitive judo player I've ever been in my life. So, you know, chalk that up to what it is. Now, I was 28 years old and training my ass off, but it really made a difference for me to be able to execute techniques cleanly. And the other part I would say is, I just think that kata, you know, I'm an iaido guy, as some of you are on this call. I just, and that's to me kind of the acme of kata practice, in the sense that the level of detail and structure is so highly prescribed. And I just think it's the best tool I've found in 61 years to transform the way you interact with experience with the universe. It transforms your body and mind. And I think all kata practice does that. I've not met anything else that does the same thing.
Thanks, Sensei. Sensei Dolphan?
Yeah, my mind went to iaido right away when we were talking about kata, because it's a system that's primarily based on kata, at least the system that I know from Sensei Suino. You know, once you're at the Shodan level, a black belt level, you start to do more interactive things and maybe even chaotic sparring. But, you know, is kata enough? I'll just say most of us on this call are primarily empty-handed martial arts practitioners, but I've never actually fought somebody with a sword. I bet not many of the people want to. I've only done kata mostly with a sword. I bet you most of the people don't want to come in and fight me empty-handed with a sword. Right? Like I think they'd be like, yeah, that's a losing endeavor. But yeah, I agree with Sensei Legacy too. And I've said it to you, Benson, and I think Sensei Legacy and I have talked about this a lot. And I know Sensei Suino and I have as well, is that sometimes when you do randori or jiu-kumite, that's the fantasy of the martial arts, but the kata is the reality of the martial arts. So that's the place where you can actually kill the person. That's where, you know, for conflict, if you have to have a conflict, I think if you're well trained in kata, and by well trained, I don't mean like being alone all the time. I think judo has it down when the kata is a two-person exercise, right? Like that's a great thing about judo kata. And when karate people use the kata in a two-person exercise where they're applying it against each other, man, that's where the real magic of kata comes out, in my opinion. So that's my thoughts on that at this 10,000 foot level. What do you think, Benson?
Well, you know, it's funny you mentioned mind, body, spirit, Hanshi Legacy, because the first thing I wrote down is Kiai. And it's something I've been talking to my students about a lot. Is one of the big things for me with Kiai is, you know, the sound and the commitment. But for me, the word I use with them is you're making a choice. Like you're saying, this happens now. And that's what I love about kata, is that you're choosing to start and to commit and to hit certain points over and over. Because, you know, jiu-kumite, it's reactive. Maybe some things happen, maybe they don't. But with the kata, you're saying right now, all these things are going to happen. The kiais are going to land here. And in that choice, and this is something you and I talked about today, and also you mentioned, Hanshi, is your mental state. You're creating a mental state. And you said nice things to me at the beginning of the call. And none of that would happen without the mental state that martial arts built, which is fundamentally for me through kata. But I really love just the idea of choice. And lastly, the idea of precision. You know, things can get pretty loose in a sparring situation where you got a 5-minute round and everybody's padded up. But break that down into bunkai. Are you actually blocking, hitting twice, throwing the kick and backing out in any kind of precise way? And I watch some good sparring students of mine start to fumble with some basic precise movements. And then it's like, great, let's work the kata more and let's work the bunkai in it more.
Love this line of questioning. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah. It's also good because it is 1/4 after the hour, which means Sensei Glaze, it's time for us to dig into what you think in relation to what everybody else thinks, not that we evaluate. What I'm trying to say is that we have something called the 10 questions. And the 10 questions, have you been thinking about the 10 questions?
No, I haven't, you know, so that's all going to be new.
Yeah, awesome. We love the 10 questions. So what I say to all our guests is, please answer as impulsively as you can, but then feel free to expand on your thoughts as much as you like.
Okay.
So the first question, what is the most effective move in your martial arts arsenal?
Foot sweeps.
I like that.
Ashiwaza.
Yeah.
Who is the most influential martial artist in your life?
Tony Owen.
Who do you think is the most influential martial artist of all time and why?
Jigoro Kata, the one who developed the kata, because the Kodokan Judo, the book, those are all his words. And, you know, he was a very wise man. And, you know, just, you know, if you follow his steps in learning that he developed 150 years ago, we still use those same steps and the same things that he developed. You know, things evolve, but it's basically still just the same.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you get there?
Welcome.
That's what Sensei Legacy said. Exactly. Well, that is exactly what he said. That's
Sensei, what excites you most about the next 5 years of your training?
Being able to travel and participate on the international level as far as judging. The last, couple of years have been very, very difficult, and I miss my friends, and I want to see the people who are my friends grow in judo and take over in the positions that they're just now beginning to take over, and they're just getting the jobs, and I want to see them just make judo grow in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Who's your favorite film and television martial artist?
And I like them all, but I really admire Keanu Reeves, and he's not really a martial artist,
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was my
he's
choice.
a cool guy. Yeah.
You just think he's cute.
I do think he's cute. Oh, you mean her or me?
Oh yeah, of course. But he's my son's age, so
Oh, he's a mensch. Who, living or dead, of any period in history, would you like to train with the most?
I really enjoyed training with Fukuda Sensei. And, I'm honored that she considered me one of her students.
Love that.
But, she's history, but, I have current mentors, Kuniko Takeuchi Sensei, who's 8th Dan. She is still a Kodokan instructor. She was on the Education Commission of the IJF for Kata. She's been chair of Pan American Kata Commission, and she's in her 80s now, but she's just a wonderful person. So I'm very lucky to have mentors, always good mentors in my life. One of those mentors also is Noboru Saito. He in Birmingham, Michigan.
Awesome. I want to talk more about that afterwards. If everyone in the world could have the greatest benefit you've gotten from martial arts, whether they train or not, what would it be? What would you give them?
Peace. It just relaxes you, gives you peace.
Love that. And our last two questions come as a pair. What is your greatest achievement and what is your greatest regret?
My greatest regret is that I didn't do more shiai. I just, after I competed at nationals, I just went on and did something else. My greatest achievement is being in judo for all these years and still being here and still showing up.
I love that. So I want to ask you, you're not a ton younger than my mom would be if she were alive today. And I know intimately from her that being a career woman and having her hobbies and raising two kids, it was unique challenges compared to, say, my dad, who technically did the same, but it was a different era. And I'm wondering if you want to talk about that at all, like the challenges to be a martial artist while raising kids and while working as well. Did you have to carve out a special thing? Because it sounds like you did have mentors going back to the 60s who did kind of help you pave a bit of a path, maybe.
Well, I just have been very lucky. My husband, I met at Ohio State. I always had something I had to go do to practice. At first it was golf, but then it was judo, and it's still now judo. But, he always pulled his weight, and, my family, my kids are now 36 and 38. They both are very independent kids and manage themselves, and it's not been easy, but it's been busy. So just having people around that are willing to help out.
Right on. So I'd like to ask, I'll start with Sensei Suino and then we'll go back to you. We chatted with Sensei Panaki last week. Talk about Kano. How did this guy 150 years ago do this? I mean, we have some ideas about Matsumura and karate, but you know, how did this guy come along and just have this sort of divine ability to codify something that's still so purely unbroken today? You want to start, Sensei Suino?
I think Glaze Sensei should kick this off, and then
No, you go ahead.
oh well, oh my gosh! I mean, clearly, Kano Sensei was a 1 in a million human being. You know, right place, right time, right history, but also, you know, a futurist, an internationalist, a great organizational mind. You know, he was just able to see things differently, maybe because of the time in history he lived. What's fascinating to me is 3 of the most important martial arts figures at any time in history came about in kind of the same era: Funakoshi, Kano, and Ueshiba of Aikido. I don't know if there was something in the solar flares, but I think it was about history, right? I think it was the passing of an era in Japan, kind of going from old Japan to modern Japan, that allowed those guys to take what was old and make it new again. And one of the big differences was right from the beginning, Kano was an internationalist and was, you know, made judo available to the world very early on against some resistance. And if you get into that history, it's actually fascinating. But this isn't the Jigoro Kano show, so I don't want to go too far down that path.
Right on.
Okay, so can I add something? Kano was a patron of those 2. And when I was in Japan in the end of October 2019, Naoki Murata, he was the archivist and very well known. He has since passed away, but he was preparing a speech. We were visiting him in his office, and he was preparing a speech for the upcoming Olympics for a group of Tokyo businessmen or something. And on his computer, he had a letter that he had, you know, scanned in from Dekubutan to Jigoro Kano, written in I can't say his name, the founder of the modern Olympics, the Frenchman, Dekubutan. But when I saw that, and in his own writing to Kano, I got cold chills. I mean, they were true internationalists, and Kano he just was able to put it all down into words.
Mm.
And he had students that could bring his ideas to fruition also.
Well, so I think this is worth getting into. Let's start with you, Sensei Glaze, and then we'll go Sensei Dolphan up through the ranks of our hosts. How important, like not how important, but where is the balance between tradition and then opening it up and abandoning tradition to move something forward? What's that balance?
I think manners and tradition are very important, but we do live in modern times, and you know, there's a way to learn things, but you know, we have to move forward. We can't keep living in the past. And you know, I don't know exactly where that balance is. I think many dojos you know, strive to find that balance, but I would prefer that everybody have good manners and respect each other. I'm not sure that I see that in some modern, not martial arts dojos, but MMA dojos, etc., who now judo people have to go into those places to run their clubs, and you know, it makes me, I just want to shake my head that there's just still that macho kind of dirty film on things, you know. And that's, and I mean that literally too. So,
Yeah, I hear that.
yeah.
Sensei Dolphin, what about you? You know, we don't get a Kano if they only do what came before them, but where's the balance with the tradition?
I think it's the traditions, right? So the different arts have their traditions. It's like your family. Your family has certain history and certain traditions. At Thanksgiving and at Christmas, certain things happen all the time. So, you know, when you come to a karate class here and the Iaido class, I follow the traditions of my teachers. And I like to think that before them, those traditions were passed along, and before them, those traditions are passed along. And those things they're valuable, not only in, as Sensei Glaze was saying, to be a good human being and be polite and those life lessons, but let's not forget, like, they're also practical. Like, these traditions are practical, and you know, it's a proven system of training that teaches you how to defend yourself in a certain way, right? Like, it's not necessarily etiquette class, but the etiquette comes from learning how to fight in those traditions. And I like to think that the other things, for me anyway, and this is just my way, they come outside of that class. So, you know, the more modern ways of, you know, moving a kettlebell around or doing some type of MMA, they should be separate in my mind from the traditional classes, right? So my karate classes and my Iaido classes are traditional. We dress a certain way, we act a certain way, we bow to each other, we bow into the class, we bow out of the class. You know, I have sparring classes where we come in here and play rock music and fight each other, but that's something different. That's not what that is. That's a very shallow slice of what the real traditions are, in my opinion.
Thanks, Sensei. Sensei Suino?
Yeah, it's everybody has to find their balance. Every dojo has to find their balance. I believe there needs to be a balance, respect for tradition, etiquette. I think my favorite person on this topic is Hanshi Legacy, because he talks about the classical martial artist. And to me, that expression embodies the virtues of recognizing history, understanding the lessons that historical martial artists taught us, never letting that go, but not limiting yourself to it as you go forward.
Yeah. Hanshi, you want to add?
Well, you know, tradition is always going on. It will always be classical karate. But like in the NHL, things change. And things in hockey are changed by the leading edge, which are the best of the best in that sport. Today, Matsumura is dead. Shigeru Kano is dead. The people who replace him are the persons who have the right to change tradition if it needs to be, not somebody who's a shodan or has been in karate for 5 years. So I truly believe that karate is ongoing and changing. It's just that the masters of today should be the ones to make those changes. So you don't want to stick to tradition just for the sake of doing tradition, but you want to stick to tradition in a modern day way in order to make martial arts better, because it is improving all the time. We are just as good as those people are. It's just that in their time, they were the ones. We went and knelt before them because they were that higher rank and we were lower ranked. Now that they've passed and we are now occupying those positions, it is up to us to keep the martial arts alive and traditional.
I love that. What I'm hearing with that is the idea, like, one of the main traditions is respecting the master. And that happens in any era. It doesn't have to be a 150-year-old version of it. But also, I think one of the keys, and I think this does get lost in our day and age, is recognizing the master. Because, you know, you mentioned the 5-year Shodan, like, there's a lot of, I don't know, 24-year-olds who are making waves by being what Sensei Glaze referred to, that macho, you know, with the MMA. If you promote yourself enough, you can bring in box office, and you do that sometimes with a lack of respect. and we can maybe miss the quieter, older master sometimes, I think.
Well, I think when you look at somebody nowadays and you see them, you see all their faults and their possible failures. But when you think about Matsumura, for instance, or Jigoro Kano, you think of them as being great because all you hear is all the great things that they do. And your imagination is the greatest thing that God's given you. It's everything that goes through your imagination creates everything else. So for somebody to look at me as, and I apologize for even saying this, as you know, a grandmaster, and I'm supposed to take the place or be like Matsumura, you can still see my faults. And it's easy to just look at me as an ordinary human being. And I am, really.
That's the legacy. A couple of thoughts that I just want to ask you about is, I think a gift that we have, not you, we, all of us, is you can recognize mastery in another person where other people cannot, right? Recently, you and I had the experience of seeing Sensei Demora, who's actually in a wheelchair, right? But there was no doubt, I think you would agree with me, there was no doubt when you laid eyes on him that he's a master. He doesn't have to be out there doing these things for us to see that he's a master.
Even when he speaks about fishing.
Even when he speaks about fishing, right?
I really love that. I'm gonna take that idea away tonight of recognizing mastery. Sensei Suino, I'd love to throw it to you to guide us through asking about Sensei Glaze's senseis, with whom you'll be more familiar than me, and maybe ask about her experience or impressions of all of them.
Well, I think the two names that jump out to me when I've heard Glaze Sensei talk and Alpanecchia talk are Tony Oed and, of course, Fukuda Keiko Sensei. You know, the world knows Fukuda Sensei pretty well, but I'd love for you to chat about her and also tell us a little bit more about Tony Oed, who I've certainly heard of and who has cut a wide path in Midwest United States and North American martial arts, but I just don't know that much about Tony Oed.
Well, I'll say Fukuda Sensei after Tony. Tony, AKA Rich by his family. I always knew him as Rich Oed. And since he has passed, everybody knows that Tony Oed, so I've gone to Tony Oed. His father was Muslim and an immigrant, and his mother was from Lebanon, but born here, and she was Catholic. So he had a little bit of a mixture there, and he was very traditional in all of his thoughts about how men and women should behave. But on the judo mat, if a woman was on the mat, you had to be able to, you were taught, you were just treated like everybody else. And you took the falls and took the beatings that everybody else did too. I don't want to overemphasize that I took beatings all the time, just sometimes it felt like that. But he, as I said earlier, he was very charismatic, and he just had a way of teaching that enabled one to memorize things easily. Had a master's degree in physical education, kinesiology, and he understood how things work in the body, and he really was able to analyze body movement and explain it in a way that everybody could understand. Besides that, he was a very strong-minded and strong physically, even though he's quite small, that he was one of the top judoka in his prime. And then Fukuda Sensei just had a way of, a way with me of always being able to catch me when I wasn't paying attention, just on purpose. I wasn't, she could just always catch me. And I learned that that's because she liked me, but she was always giving me very good instruction and making sure that I did things right. And she just was a wonderful person and very soft spoken. And every time, the mantra was one more time, one more time. So Al can remember that quite vividly, one more time. Al and Mark were not small people. And I remember at the Nationals in Florida, just before they competed, Fukuda Sensei was giving them a private lesson. And it was in the forms of gentleness, Juno Kata. And she had Mark picking up Al time after time after time. And Mark's face and it wasn't quite right. And Mark was just, I could tell he was ready to just give way. But finally I stepped in and I said, Sensei, let me be Mark's uke for a little bit. So that, I was much smaller. So that he could get the idea. So, once was never enough. You had to do it one more time.
Thanks for that. Sensei Dolphan, I know you had a question about shiai and about, something you can relate to with Sensei Glaze.
Sensei Glaze, in the 10 questions, you said your regret was that you had wished you had done more shiai. And before you answer that question, I just want to say, I really enjoyed competing when I was competing. And I wish I had competed more. Like today, I wish I had competed more. And one of the things that I just want to share with you that Sensei Legacy said to me once a long time ago is that most people quit competing before they ever hit the spot where they're actually good, like they're actually capable of competing. Yeah. So I'm just really curious why you wish you had done more shiai and what it is that you wish you had done with more shiai.
Well, there wasn't much shiai when I was in my prime physical for women and physical abilities. And at this point in my life, and always, it just gives me more street cred. I'm good at fighting. I was good at fighting. But because I'm a kata person, it means that I don't understand shiai, I don't understand fighting or anything. But at our dojo, the few women that were there, we fought and trained as hard as any of the shiai players. And I just wish that I would have been able to do more just for street cred.
Love that. Sensei Dolphan. Oh yeah, Hanshi?
Yeah, okay. I just sort of want to get off of the competition thing and into real life judo, because there are probably a lot of women watching and probably look up to you as a role model. And I've got it written down here. As a trained woman, and being that men are 35% heavier or have more muscle mass than women, what do you think? Can a woman go in there? Because there are probably lots of women who would want to go and join judo. This is a time for you to open a door for them and tell them, does training overcome all those barriers? Should they go to a dojo and train to overcome them?
I think it depends on the dojo. I think if a woman goes into a dojo that all the men just want to do is fight and beat people up, they're not going to have a good time. I think women need to be in a dojo that the instructor understands the difference in weight and body and help the women to learn technique. Now, that doesn't mean that men and women shouldn't train together. It means that, like Nina Kutra-Kelly, she was an Olympian just in this past Olympics. She's a big girl and she needs to work out with men to have people to fight with. But, I don't want to see women beaten up just because they're women. And just, like I've stepped on a mat. It was at the old Toledo Judo Club. I was a black belt and, I weighed 120 pounds and this kid comes in and just beats the crap out of me. I just took falls. He was strong. I'm not going to fight him, but I was going to protect myself. But a sensei needs to know to train their students to have them work together so that if the higher ranking student or the stronger person always works out with the same strength that the lower ranking or lower skilled person has, instead of just showing them how they can beat them up and throw them.
In life,
So that doesn't mean in self-defense that you can't inflict damage. Self-defense is different than just working out.
this is sort of what I'm saying, though. For the loser men who try to be bullies and that to women, and it's not all men, it's just those particular persons. Wouldn't that be beneficial? Because that's who is going to be trying to push themselves on women, are guys who are bigger and meaner, maybe even intoxicated. Or wouldn't that sort of help you already set your mind to the fact that you have to fight somebody bigger and meaner and maybe not even right in your minds?
Well, I think, my last two kata partners, Al, who's a big guy, and Ryan O'Connor, who was 6'3", and when we were training together, 250, he was 250. I could throw him around and be mean, and I can do that. But I think if women go into a place and they're just mauled, they're not going to want to come back. You need, it needs to be a different, the development process is longer for most women. I'm not saying there aren't women that just come in and also want to beat on people and work out hard, but for overall preservation of your body throughout time, I'm not intimidated by any size man because I know I can hurt him. That's self-defense. I think it needs women, many people in general, men and women, aren't comfortable with being up close as like judo is. Many people aren't that comfortable, and that's what it takes, I think, to be comfortable in any situation, that you're not afraid to be close to people, and you got to know technique. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
Yes.
it just
Absolutely.
everybody needs to be trained on their own level, is basically what I'm saying.
I believe that what you're saying is right, that a good sensei will lead you into being your better self without you having to be beat up, like you say. So
Yeah.
Choose your dojos wisely. Don't just walk into any dojo, even if it's just in the neighborhood, right? Am I right?
Exactly.
You should be choosing somebody who's going to be good for your training.
Yeah, and teach you technique.
Technique overcomes everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Sensei Dolphan?
Yeah, I think all that sounds good, but I don't think it's necessarily always related to men and women. I think it's weak and strong, right? Like you could line up, like I could line up all the kids in this class and beat the crap out of all of them, but I would be a horrible sensei if I did that, right? Even though it might be fun, like it could be fun, right? Like there's a couple of them maybe that you'd want to, but but so I think the one thing I just want to be careful of is that there are bully senseis who want to make themselves feel good by beating people up, and then they make themselves feel great about that. Training is always a great training, like Sensei Legacy just said. Technique, Sensei Glaze agreed. Technique is the great equalizer. Sensei Legacy taught me that in the very beginning, it only takes 15 pounds of pressure per square inch on the jawline to knock somebody out. I'm a small, like people might not think so. I'm a smaller person. I'm only like 5'8". My body weight fluctuates between 155 and 160. I know I can muster up 15 pounds of pressure per square inch against any man, woman, or child to put them on their butt if I need to. I believe Sensei Glaze could do that too. I would really, really love to see somebody who's a very big, large man who didn't know Sensei Glaze walk up to her and think, I want your watch. And I would love to see what happened in the next few seconds after that.
I'd give him my watch.
Yeah, I know you would.
Take the watch.
Right. But if you couldn't, I think they'd be going for a good ride. Like that's all I'm saying is I think your training and experience would take them on a good ride. And a lot of what we've talked about is judo versus judo, a big judo person versus a smaller judo person. And in the end, what we're actually talking about is judo versus somebody who's never trained before.
Right.
Right. And judo versus somebody who's never trained before means Sensei Glaze has the advantage. She's got the.
And I'm sneaky.
Yeah, I believe that you are.
Yeah.
Now that we've seen each other, I'm not going to let you grab a hold of me. For sure.
Sensei Suino, where do you go with that, with the throwing arts, with the grappling arts, when you've got a big size differential and the smaller person doesn't know as much? You know, how do you guide that learning for them so they leave? You know, she mentioned being beat up. I've been beat up by everyone in this call other than that Sensei Glaze. But where do you go to the point where it's productive?
And you will be again.
I look forward to that, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think the person who's up in front, you know, leading the class is critical in that regard. It's funny, I had some frustration this last Wednesday in my class. We had a real big class with a ton of people, everybody from Sandans in judo to a couple people that were there for the first time, you know, maybe white belts with 3 weeks experience. Several of whom were women, several of whom were very small people. And, you know, lately I've been saying this thing, I stop the class and I ask everybody, if you get hurt, whose fault it is? And they go, it's my fault. And then I go, if your partner gets hurt, whose fault is it? And they say, it's also my fault. And I say, yes, that's the attitude you want to have. Yes, we should train very, very hard, but we should take into account the limitations and strengths of our partners and make sure that we're training safely. You know, sooner or later in judo or karate sparring, you're going to get hurt. You've got to minimize it. And as Glaze Sensei said, I think you have to make sure that people spend enough time in the dojo in a productive, supportive environment that they learn to love it and they learn to realize that the pain and the fear is something that's transient. You can move through it. If you give them that in a big dose in the first couple of weeks, they're going to leave because they've gotten hurt. And I've been the recipient of a lot of those students. I've had students come in from other clubs in the Ann Arbor area and say, my first day, I got my ankle, you know, cracked because everybody was trying so hard to throw me. That's a big mistake, man, woman, anybody else. The first mission for all of us is getting to learn to love the dojo.
Yep.
So let me throw that back to you, Sensei Glaze, because you mentioned taking your beatings. We all smile at the concept of it. So let's move away from the idea of big, small, or anybody being abusive. How much, as you know, should someone be taking in the realm of physical pain to get to that next level? Like how far do you have to push it? Sounds like you did.
We see, I don't think of it as pain. You know? You know, it
Just
just,
so glad I asked
you
that
just have to
question.
push yourself. And, you know, it can be discomfort, but, you know, my sensei, you know, you could get hurt, but you still showed up and worked around your injury. And, you know, maybe I have a high tolerance of pain. I just don't think working out is pain or ever, even if you get hurt. It just, you know, it's just one of those things, and you work through it and train. You train your body to be strong so that you don't get hurt. Lift weights and sit-ups and stuff. If you aren't physically fit, you will get hurt more often.
Yep. Sensei Suino, anywhere you want to take that before we go around the horn? Anything you want to touch on?
Let's go around the horn. I will see what occurs to me as I listen to some others go.
Okay, amazing. Sensei Glaze, the way we wind our way into 10 o'clock Eastern time, 8 o'clock Calgary time, sometimes my own cheesiness makes me laugh, we go around the horn and we talk about our time with you. And then the last thought, other than our housekeeping notes afterwards, will go to you to talk about anything you want. So Hanshi Legacy, you want to talk at all about our evening tonight?
Well, Sensei Glaze, you have excited me a couple of times about martial arts. And I have felt a couple of your truths about your training and the martial arts in general. All martial artists are aiming for the same goals. And while we do different physical martial arts, our insides and are all the same. They're all aiming for the same goals. We're just doing different martial arts. So spiritually and in our minds, we are all the same.
Yep.
And I appreciate talking to you tonight.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thanks, Hanshi. Sensei Suino?
Gosh, Sensei Glaze, you know, we've had the fortune of being on the mats together a few times, and I've watched you teach, and it's been wonderful for myself, and also it's such an inspiration for my students. You know, it was only a few weeks ago when you were in Ann Arbor with us, and the students have talked about it with just such passion. They can't wait to have you come back. They're bugging me to work on kata even more than they already do. And you've got them thinking that they can compete in kata and do well. What an inspiration for them. And it's delightful for me to hear a little bit more about your story. I think we barely scratched the surface tonight, but that seems to happen with a lot of our guests. But for me, selfishly, this has been a fulfillment of something I've wanted to do for a long time, was just learn a little bit more about you as a person outside the confines of the tatami mats. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm available anytime.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Sensei Suino. Sensei Dolphin?
Sensei Glaze, if you've watched a couple of these, you know I write down a lot of notes, and I like to prove to you that I've been listening to you, and I've been impacted by the words that you've shared with us tonight. So I did perk up. Like everybody on this call, we all also like to golf. Like I've golfed with everybody on this call, and it's super cool that at Ohio State, you were on the varsity golf team. And I'm curious that how you could be a Buckeye and Suino Sensei could be a Wolverine, and you could somehow stand in the same room together and shoot together. That's like a battle to the death right there. But anyway, I heard you say that judo was a gift to you and that it helped you to relieve a lot of anxiety. And I know everybody on this call, all of the hosts can relate to that. One of my students once said, when I come in the dojo, I put my bags down, and when I leave, sometimes I forget to pick them up. Right. Yep. So I like that. I just smiled so many times. You're a tough person, Sensei. And you said, beating on someone, it's fun. Right? Like I just like that. Beating on somebody, it's fun. I agree. I can't believe you're 73. Sensei Suino has this thing about, we're not normal. Like the people on this call, we're not normal because nobody believes that we are the age that we are. Like when I'm a youngster compared to the people on the call, but when I tell people I'm 50, they're like, no, you're not. Like I thought, I cannot believe that you're 73 years old. So, and I mean that truthfully. I'm not trying to be deferral to your rank. 7 kata in judo, that it takes thinking, it takes being in shape, and that you're still learning. That's,
Yep.
I think Funakoshi, when he was late in his 90s, did an inside middle block and said, I think I still understand. I think I finally understand this. Right. So that's
just starting to learn. Yeah.
Right. I like when you said in the kata, you have to hit me or I can't do it properly. I think that's something that's missing a lot. Right?
Yeah.
I personally, I don't know if it's judo or what it is. I know Sensei Legacy likes foot sweeps. I like foot sweeps. Like it's one of my favorites. And I'm super happy that that's your favorite technique. Sensei Legacy says there's nothing worse than when you have to lay down at somebody's feet and then pick yourself up to get up and start fighting again, right? So I like that a foot sweep is your favorite thing. I have different opinions, but I respect your opinion about Kano Sensei being the most influential, and I don't disagree with it. Like I have divergent thinking on who the most influential is, but Kano's always up there in my mind as one of the most influential of all time. I like that your answer was exactly the same as Sensei Legacy's. What do you hope God will say when you enter heaven? Welcome. Like it's exactly the same. You both said exactly the same. I like that you said that, you know, what you hope in the next 10 years is you miss your friends and your friends are judo people and you want to see your friends and you want to do stuff together with them. I think that's an awesome thing for the next 10 years. One thing that came across to me as you were talking is that judo is so organized as a martial art. It's so organized at every level. Like you as a martial artist and your community is so damn organized, and that comes clear in the way that you're talking about it. I think it's really cool that you say you have a really supportive husband, and that's the reason why you were able to do a lot of the things that you did, and that your kids are very independent. So you guys were a family, but you were all off doing your own things and supporting each other with the stuff that you were doing. I think that's super cool. When you talk about Owen Sensei and Fukuda Sensei, it's clear to me that you really studied these people. Like you know them on a deep level, not just, oh, they had a good foot sweep or they had a good this. Like you know them as human beings, and I think that's great. You said, I'm good at fighting. You wish you had done more shiai, and you said, I'm good at fighting. I want to tell you, I really believe that you are. Like, I believe that you are good at fighting. And we had a comment come in from one of the people that all of us really respect. His name is Sensei Conrad Copeland. He lives in Windsor. And this is a comment that he said, Sensei Glaze, and I just want to share it with you. He said, I have never met Sensei Glaze, but her voice has a vibration that projects confidence and leadership. Gambate. And that's the final. I want to give Sensei Copeland the final comment. Sean?
Thanks for that, Sensei Dolphin. It's funny, you know, I wrote down, I miss my friends and want them to assume the roles. When you said that, like, you know, we're such a family, the four of us and all of us within our club. And the idea that that's what's most important, not just that you miss them, because the community is what keeps us here, but also you want them to flourish into the things that they're going to become and be those subsequent generations that keeps the ball rolling. I really appreciated that. I really loved when Hanshi asked you about the women in the martial arts, and it would have been a very easy opportunity to go, yeah, everyone should take martial arts. And I really liked the honesty of your answer, the way you broke down, yes, but here's a way to look at it. Here's a way to stay training beyond the first 2 weeks. And here's a way to structure training. We kind of landed on the idea of size more than sex. But anyways, I just really like the honesty on that, because it does have to be a proper fit or else people won't stay. And when you said, you have to not be afraid to be close. I think that's exactly right. I mean, if I think about my own martial arts and stand up, I think for 5 to 8 years, I never even got close to throwing a dangerous punch because I was afraid to get close, be hit. I'm quite the opposite now, but it really was something when you said that. I thought about my early martial arts training and how much time I maybe lost to a fear of getting too close. And then, I mean, I know we all perked up on this one. Like I'm the same as you. I don't think of it as pain. Like it doesn't hurt. It's something, it's a specific thing that's happening, but it's not a deterrent to going and training more or fighting more, or doing the thing more. It's like, yeah, that's just, you know, I assume some people feel that and go, no. And we all feel it and go, yeah, okay, what are we doing now? And I really, that came through. So I really appreciate that. Our last thought, take as long as you like, goes to you. Yeah, Sensei.
Me? Well, I've really enjoyed my time with the four of you. You've made me think about things. And I just appreciate each one of your personalities. I feel that I've gotten to know all of you, much better than I did before. And I was quite nervous about being here and talking with you, but you've all done very good things in your lives as far as martial arts go. And I appreciate your asking me the questions that you did, allowing me to fumble through answers. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And I'm happy to be the 50th of the interviews.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me throw that to you, Sensei Dolphin, for what's coming up. And also, you know, I'd forgotten to mention that it is our 50th show.
Yeah, Sensei Glaze, I can't think of a better 50th episode. It started a bit rocky with people getting in and traveling from here to Calgary, and but you saved us. You pulled this up and you really made it like an amazing 50th episode. I got nothing but love and respect for you, Sensei Glaze. So yeah, the next couple of weeks, we're going to take a week off, which I hate. It's the worst week when we don't actually do it. And then, you know, somebody who is actually inducted into the Black Belt Hall of Fame with Sensei Legacy is Sensei Brad Jones. And I wasn't really super aware of his story, but I watched a different podcast with him, reached out to him. He wants to do it. I'm telling you, when we crack this open, it's going to be a super entertaining episode with Sensei Jones. And I chatted with him, Sean. You know, he's a professional musician.
Nice.
So he talked about maybe you and him singing the karate blues together. So
I'll do some blues. I'll tune up my guitar for that.
Yeah. So that's number one. And then the other person that I've been corresponding with, and I think is going to be on, is Ian Abernathy. We're just trying to nail down the actual time that we're going to do it, because he's in London, England. It's 5 hours ahead. We can't do it at this time because it's just disrespectful to try and ask somebody to be on in their time zone at like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning when they have to go work the next day. So he's the guest. We have to be the good hosts. So those are the people we're going to have on. And then we're going to have another host chat, which I just love doing. So
love it.
That's what's coming next.
Thanks so much, Sensei. And by the way, I did get a message from Sensei Maletsky last week. While this won't be an issue tonight because we aren't doing the YouTube live, sometimes if you tune into the YouTube between the live and the uploading, there can be a glitch. So just so you know, because he had asked about that, and Robert helped me understand that. So if you watch it the next day or a couple hours later, there'll be no issue. But sometimes if you're right in that lag period, it can glitch. So just an FYI on that. And then I just want to say thanks to all the people who make Punch, Kick, Choke, Chat happen. Robert Schlumpsky, who's with us tonight, Mike Russell, Victoria Feth, Justin Shea, Alden Adair, Andrei Sedashev. They keep this show running. We just get to be the beautiful faces of it. And thanks again, Sensei. I'm working on it. Thanks again, Sensei Glaze. What a pleasure to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
Can't wait to meet you in person.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Good night, Sensei Glaze.
Good night. Nice meeting you all.
You as well.